What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the opinionated hippie. Today, this is part 30 of my ranking and reviewing the Grateful Dead's Dave's Picks, an archival concert release series that they release about 4 a year. We're now on number 30. I'm going to review number 30, and then I'm going to rank it as I compare it to the other 29. So what do we got for 30? We got a 4-disc set, 3 discs, and a bonus disc. And again, problem with ranking this is the bonus disc might be the best disc on here, which is like, why is it the bonus disc and not one of the regular discs? Because I think the bonus disc, I think it is the best part, though it's a really, really good release. January 2nd, 1970, we get the complete January 2nd, 1970 show, and then we get most of the January 3rd, 1970 show as filler at the end of discs and as the bonus discs, a bonus disc. Fillmore East is a New York City show, and as they do with the filler, the songs that are bonus songs are in the correct order as they're placed on a disc, meaning as they appear on the disc, they appear in a show, but they're not in the correct order over the course of the discs. So, for example, the first bonus material is like the opening song and then a whole bunch of songs from the second set. Yes. And then the other bonus material is a whole bunch of songs from the show, but maybe some first set songs and some second set songs. So they appear as they would in the show, but they're missing pieces and they're missing chunks. So like you're not getting an encore before a first set song. You're not getting a second set song before a first set song, but they're not necessarily complete, and it's not necessarily in like the actual order they were played in the song, though they are like the primacy thing is first. If it appeared earlier in a show, it appears earlier on the disc. So it's a weird release as far as that. And then it's just hodgepodge all over the place because of the length of the songs and because they don't want to break up, say, the continuity of a Dark Star. So it's a weird release as far as that goes. Also, I think it's worth noting that if we include Dick's Picks, the 36 Dick's Picks release, and Dave's Picks, we now have material from just this November, December, January, and February, that 4-month period in 69 and 70, we have a November 8th show, December 12th show, December 20th show, January 23rd, January 24th, February 2nd, February 13th, February 14th, and now we get right smack in the middle of all those, the first 2 shows of 70, January 2nd and January 3rd. So we're getting a whole bunch of stuff from a really small period of time. And it is a really fascinating period of time as far as the Dead are concerned. They're leaving the 60s, which I guess it's easy as a benchmark. The 60s were a lot more heavy blues, psych, energy, maybe not as nuanced in their jamming, maybe a lot more electric as far as just the noise they would put out and where jams would go, and their use of feedback at the, literally feedback, its own standalone track, and just their use of feedback in jams and just that idea of making noise with the instruments. And they're transitioning into a period in which on albums, they're writing more Americana type stuff. Uncle John's Band, country-ish Americana songs like Cumberland Blues, Dire Wolf, things like that. But then over time, that jamming is going to get a little jazzier, and it's going to lose a lot of that heavy psych blues emphasis, especially as Pigpen becomes, less of a factor in the band. And so this is a weird, interesting period where you're getting those Americana songs are starting to seep in. I do think some of the jams, particularly on this release, have a little bit of a looser feel that would be more indicative of what would come in like 72 and 73 and 74. But you still also have a predominantly heavy, psych, electric, sort of bombastic type sound. Not necessarily like a huge stadium filling bombastic sound, but just like a loud, heavy, psych bombastic sound. The band is as far as the normal band, you got Mickey still here. He hasn't left yet. You get TC on keyboards, and you get Pigpen on percussion. So you got some interesting stuff going on there. Right, TC is in the band at this point. Yeah, TC's on keyboards. So yeah, we got some interesting stuff here. Let's see. What do we got? Like I said, 4 discs. I think the first disc is, I'm not going to say it's weak because none of this stuff is weak. I absolutely love this era. But I think it's the least sort of must hear disc out of the three. It is the entirety of the January 2nd early show. So we get an early and a late show. We get both shows. The entirety of the early show fits on disc one, and it's like about an hour long, which is crazy because the second show runs well over an hour. Opens up with the Masons' Children. Really good energy in the Masons. Great lead-off song. Everything sounds great. Get a Casey Jones, Black Peter, pretty strong Black Peter. Really good energy in this Black Peter. Nice Black Peter. A Mama Tried, hard to handle. Cumberland Blues. That's it for the other one. That's your typical. That's it for the other one of this era. A nice jammed out other one, but I think this is a pretty like standard. That's it for the other one. There's another that's it for the other one on the bonus disc that I think is much better. But this is not bad. It's just kind of standard for the era. And then we get a Cosmic Charlie, which I think is really good. The Cosmic Charlie energy just kind of works. And I'm not always a fan of Cosmic Charlie energy, but this one for some reason I don't know, there's something about it that just kind of worked. What did I write? I wrote that I actually like this one. Usually it's one of those songs where once the momentum gets going, I kind of check out because the payoff isn't always there. But this one, it really works for me. This Cosmic Charlie, I don't know. There's something about this Cosmic Charlie that I like. And that's it for the early show. Like those 8 songs. That's the entirety of it. All fits on disc one. And then we have the opening 2 songs from the late show. We get an Uncle John's Band and a High Time. Both pretty typical of the era. Just good performances. That's disc one. Disc 2 has more of the January 2nd late show plus January 3rd bonus tracks. We get a Dire Wolf, which I kind of like. I like the energy. It's kind of in between where they would go on Working Man's Dead with this versus sort of just a different kind of slower, bluesier psych vibe. It's a weird in-between energy that works for me. Really good easy wind. I like the easy wind. Really good energy. Kind of lumbering at first. Feels like a little just kind of like, I don't know, a little too slow and sluggish, but the energy it works for the energy that they eventually deliver once they get into the jammy part. A China Rider that has a really nice sort of loose energy in it. It feels a little more jammier than normal prior to this point in their career. Like you can see where they're going to take this in the next couple of years and really stretch out that middle part, stretch out that jammy energy. You're starting to get a little taste of what that is. Not a big taste, but a little taste of where that would go. Really good lovin'. The organ work especially. We get I wrote some serious psych organ energy in Good Lovin'. Not a big fan of Good Lovin'. This one works. 7.5 minutes. Perfect timing. Good Lovin'. We get a Me and My Uncle. Then apparently somebody, I think it's a drummer has a problem, but they're fixing something on stage. So Bob starts singing Monkey and the Engineer, and then a couple band members start joining in. Really nice little less than 2-minute performance of Monkey and the Engineer, which is really sweet and just works really, really well. That's the end of the January 2nd stuff. Then we get the bonus tracks on disc 2. We get the opening Morning Dew from the 3rd show. Really good Morning Dew. Great energy. Love this song. It works in whatever era they play it in. Big Boss Man, Dancing in the Street. That is really, really good dancing in the street energy. This is a good jam in the middle. In fact, this jam is so good that at one point they almost they bring it back down, and I think Bob tries to get some audience participation going and tries to get different people to clap in different places. Nothing comes of that. It just kind of seems to Bob introduces the idea and then nothing happens. So Jerry just starts jamming away again and kind of works the band up into the energy before they go into the final chorus. But a nice, loose band having fun, dancing in the street energy. We get a St. Stephen that's kind of typical. And then the transition from St. Stephen goes right into In the Midnight Hour, and it just starts with this boom, this thud, and then they go into the In the Midnight Hour. It's a good In the Midnight Hour. I like the song. If I have a complaint about it, it's a little too much focused on the Pigpen energy, him doing the Pigpen thing, than it is the jammy aspect of it. And towards about it's like a 9-10 minute version of it. Toward like the 7.5, 8 minute mark, there's a jam. Jerry starts really kind of maybe exploring ideas, but then they quickly go back and like the Pigpen ranting and stuff. So it's a fun way to end the show, or at least to end this disc. I think live it probably would have been more enjoyable. On disc, I want a little bit more of a jam, but it's a neat song to hear. Glad it was included. Glad they played it. That's disc 2. Pretty solid disc. Some fun track selections, if not any really epic major jams. Then we get to disc 3, which is the remainder of the January 2nd late show, of which so far I think we only had a number of songs, which was like some of disc 1, most of disc 2. We're now on disc 3. We get 4 songs, and I think these 4 songs are longer than the entire early show. We get a 32-minute Dark Star, and it's your typical Dark Star from this era. We get a nice pre-vocal jamming session. We get the vocals, and then we drop off into deep, quiet space, like what I like to call wind chime space, where nobody's doing anything, and maybe I think it's Mickey's like hitting what sound like wind chimes, and that's all you hear. We get a good long exploration of wind chime space. Little noises here and there, little feedback here and there, little percussion here and there, just kind of like it is a quiet, delicate place. Much credit to the audience. The audience is like there for it. They're not making noise. They're waiting to see what happens. Eventually we take that dark start, that quiet space. It builds back up into your upbeat, jaunty jam. We get what almost feels like a feeling groovy jam, like they're teasing a feeling groovy jam. They don't quite commit to it all the way, but there's bits of it there, I think. Maybe a little more than I'm giving it credit for, but it's not a full-blown feeling groovy jam. But it's one of those upbeat, happy, jaunty, sort of like post-deep space explorations that the Dead usually did in this era. And then they finally go into like Dark Star jamming, and then they go in the final verse. Just really good. Just a really good exploratory Dark Star. Wouldn't call it the best of this era, and I am not always a huge fan of like 4 or 5 or 6 minutes of that deep, deep, deep space, but it's pretty interesting. It's pretty neat. It's some nice explorations. That goes into St. Stephen. Better St. Stephen than the one that we previously talked about. It jams a little bit harder at the end. In fact, the jam between the end of St. Stephen and the 11 seems nice and stretched out. And the 11 seems to be taken in a little bit more of maybe a laid back energy, or maybe just a little more stretched out energy. I want to say that 11 jam actually gets pretty quiet and gets pretty sparse in the middle of it before they build it back up. Kind of some scattered energy before we get to the vocals. Once we get to the vocals, things kind of tighten up pretty well. But there's something about this 11 that just it feels like it's a little more patient, a little more stretched out, not necessarily jamming harder, but just jamming with a little more like, let's take our time, let's explore. We're not in a rush to go anywhere. There's something about this 11 that I really like, just somewhat of a more comfortable pace. Not that those other paces are wrong, but there's something about this that just feels a little more laid back. And then when they get done jamming on that, they jump right into Love Light. All of a sudden, we're like jamming on the 11. All of a sudden, it's like, doon, 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 doon. We're right into the Love Light. And the first half of this Love Light, it's a 22-minute Love Light, 23-minute Love Light. The first half of this might be maybe up to like the 15, 16-minute mark, might be my favorite Love Light. Not a big fan of Love Lights. I just tend to think that we don't need 35 minutes of Love Light, even though usually once you reach that 20, 25-minute mark, you get some really interesting space jams in there. I just think the energy like the first 15, 60 minutes of this is really strong. Some really good jams, a nice little weird psych funky jam in there at one point. At that point, I think they should have wrapped it up. Maybe it goes on a little, maybe 5 or 6 minutes too long for my taste, but it's a really, really good love light. I just really like it. There's an alligator tease, a little brief alligator tease thrown in there. That's kind of fun, even though they haven't played alligator, would play it at the following show. But I really like it. I think this is one of the best love lights for my taste that have been released. Though I do think there are pocket jams on other love lights, you know, those really long 30-minute love lights, usually around the 25-minute mark, there's really good jams. I'd rather have a 22-minute love light and not have that serious jam. So I like this love light. But the January 2nd show is really, really, really strong. And this third disc is just like 1969, 70 Dead, like just a perfect example of what they do. Really long, stretched out Dark Star, solid St. Stephen, excellent 11, and a really, really solid Turn on Your Love Light. Just 4 songs that I think really represent what this era of the Dead are. The bonus disc is ridiculously good. The bonus disc starts off with a Cold Rain and Snow. Always a fan of a Cold Rain and Snow. That was not the opener of the show. The Cold Rain and Snow was just, where was that in the third show? It was right smack dab in the middle of the first set. So yeah, and this is the first set. So, oh no, in the early show, there were 2 shows, early show, late show. It was smack dab in the middle of the early show. Then we get what might be the highlight of this entire release. We get an alligator, goes into drums as it always does. Then we get the rest of Alligator. And this Alligator kind of reminds me of the Dead's version of what the Genesis does. What Genesis did, and I Know What I Like in Your Wardrobe, where after the vocals, they would kind of jam it out. And like Rutherford and Banks would go back and forth quoting different songs. Like there'd be like a Blood on the Rooftops quote, and then a Stagnation quote, and then maybe another quote. And this one has like a full-on, I think we get a full-on China tease. I think Bob starts playing that, like that China riff. I think it's the opening riff he starts playing, that I think he starts playing that riff. So we get a full-on China tease. Then we get a full-on Going Down the Road Feeling Bad tease. We get an I Bid You Goodnight tease. We get all of these, like, the Dead going from like song to song, teasing these different songs over the course of what is a really well jammed out Alligator, which eventually just kind of goes into feedback, and we get like 6.5 minutes of feedback. Fantastic Alligator. Then we get stuff from the late show from January 3rd. So all that stuff was from the early show on January 3rd on the bonus disc. Then we get the late show, get a Casey Jones, Mason's Children, not as good as the one that opens up the whole set. And we get a That's It for the other one that is just fantastic. Really good energy in the entire thing. Just really nice. That middle jam between the verses is just your solid, going at it, really good psych energy jam. Not the best the other one ever jam, better than the one on the earlier disc, but a really solid, worth hearing jam from a fantastic era. And then they go back, that's in the other one part. They go back into Cryptical Envelopment, and that cryptical energy, that jam to close out Cryptical after they return to it for that second part, that closing jam as they ride that out and eventually go into Cosmic Charlie is fantastic. It is so good. It is another just high point up there with that Alligator. They just really, really, really jam that out. And then, and then they play Cosmic Charlie. And again, I think I've done this before. This is the Cosmic Charlie that I really, really love. This is the one that just the energy is good, feels a little more playful, feels like they know what they're doing. They're kind of honed in, a little more focused. They got out the kinks in that first show. We're now on the second show of the year. That first show one wasn't bad. So what I said about it earlier, I'm not going to take that back. This one is better. This might be one of my favorite Cosmic Charlies. Again, not a fan of that song live. This one does it for me. Then we close out with the Uncle John's Band. So yeah, that's what we get from what I think is one of the most fascinating eras of the Dead. 69, early 70. Even though there are songs I kind of don't care for, like That's It, Turn on Your Love Light. This version is great. Love the energy. Love that. It's the sound in which they still sound like a 60s psych rock band, but there are moments throughout the entire thing when you can feel where they're going. You can see that roadmap, what's up ahead, in like certain jams. The China Rider jam has that, you know, a little bit. The other one jam feels like it's stretched out a little bit. That Alligator jam feels a little more playful. There's just a little bit of energy sprinkled throughout this. And it's like, yeah, we're heading in a good direction. But yeah. Love this era. Where would I put this? Where is that list? I would put it right there. Again, kind of in the middle, right at number 14, right behind the 77 show I did. Those are probably pretty even. Like the 77 show, not the best of the 77 shows, but it's 77, so it's really fantastic. This 70 show, not the best of this era. Those February shows earlier, even that December show, way up at number 2. My second favorite release of this so far, that volume 6. Really good. But again, it's not as good as other stuff from this era, but because it's from this era, it's going to get ranked high. And again, we're looking at a list where we're going down to like number 11 and 12 are solid, excellent shows, like S tier shows. And then we're falling to like S minus or A plus. And it's really only a handful near the end where I'm like, maybe an A show, maybe A minus at the very worst, but probably not even that. But all of these releases are fantastic. But I would put this one again right at 14. This is, I think, the third one in a row I've put at 14, and everything else around it's just fluctuating. It's been moved up or down based on where it lands. You know how things work. But anyways, yeah, I think I'm stuck in a like, I don't want to rank things too low, but I don't want to put them too high rut at this point. So I'm gonna continue this, and then, you know, I might in like a year go back and like reevaluate all these and see if I've changed my mind, because I do seem to be predictable in my patterns at this point. But yeah, that's all I got to say about what is another excellent Dave's Picks release. If you've heard this, let me know what you think. If you go check it out, let me know what you think. All that kind of stuff. You know how this works. Subscribe, like, share, and go listen to music, people. Go listen to all the music. Peace. Talk to you later.